2 days before the wedding, I paid $205,000 for. My son texted me, maybe just come for the ceremony only. His fiancée, wearing the dress my money bought, called me trash to my face. That night, I quietly called the bank. And the next morning, I stand in front of my bedroom mirror, holding this damn teal dress like it's made of gold instead of silk. 65 years old, and I'm still trying to figure out if I look like a mother of the groom or just some old lady playing dress up. The fabric feels smooth between my fingers, real quality, not the knockoff stuff you'd find at Target. I paid good money for this thing, had it custom made at that fancy boutique downtown where the sales girls look at you like you're gonna steal something if you don't flash a credit card fast enough. The color's perfect, though. Teal, not too bright, not too dull. Classy, my sister Carol would say. It brings out what's left of the blue in my eyes. The ones Danny used to say looked like lake water on a sunny day back when he was small enough to sit on my lap and mean it. Those days feel like a lifetime ago now, back when I was just mom instead of this thing I've apparently become, an obligation, a check mark on his wedding to-do list. The dress hangs heavy in my hands, and I can't help but think about all the other dresses I've worn to important events over the years. My own wedding dress, 27 years ago, a simple A-line number from JCPenney that Henry said made me look like an angel. The black dress I wore to his funeral 5 years back, bought in a rush from Macy's because I couldn't bear to shop for something so final. And now this teal thing, which was supposed to be for celebrating, for standing proud next to my son on the biggest day of his life. But Danny's text from this morning keeps playing in my head like a broken record. I've read it about 50 times now, and it still makes my stomach twist up like a pretzel. Hey Mom, quick thing about the wedding. Vivian and I talked, and we think it's better if you don't mention the bakery to her family. They're pretty traditional, and we want to keep things simple. Also, we had to move some people around for seating, so you'll be at table 12 instead of the family table. Thanks for understanding. Love you. Love you. Right. That's what you say when you're trying to soften a blow that's gonna leave a mark anyway. I've been running Flower and Hearth for 15 years now, ever since Henry got sick, and we needed something to keep us afloat. It's not some rinky-dink operation either. We've got regular customers. We supply 3 coffee shops in town, and last Christmas, we were so busy I had to bring in extra help. But apparently, owning a bakery isn't fancy enough for Vivian's crowd. Not respectable enough for whatever image they're trying to project. Table 12. I know exactly where that is, in the reception hall, way in the back, near the kitchen doors where the noise from the staff will drown out half the speeches. That's where they put the distant relatives, the plus ones nobody really knows, the people you invite because you have to but hope won't stick around too long. That's where they're putting the mother of the groom. I set the dress down on my bed and walk over to the window that overlooks Main Street. Havenwood's not much to look at, just another small Michigan town where everybody knows everybody else's business, and the biggest excitement is usually the high school football games on Friday nights. But it's home. And it's where I built something from nothing after Henry died. The bakery's just 2 blocks down, and I can almost smell the bread from here, even though I know that's impossible. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm worried about a dress when my own son apparently can't stand what I do for a living. Every morning at 4:30, I'm up and at the ovens, making sure the coffee crowd has fresh muffins and the lunch rush has sandwiches waiting. My hands are permanently stained with flour, my back aches from lifting 50-pound bags of ingredients, and my social life consists mainly of chatting with customers while they decide between sourdough and whole wheat. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and it kept us going when everything else was falling apart. I pick up my phone and scroll back through Danny's messages from the past few months. They're all business, logistics about the wedding, questions about payments, reminders about deadlines. When did we stop talking about anything real? When did I become just the person who writes the checks instead of the woman who used to kiss his scraped knees and help him with his homework at this very kitchen table? The wedding's costing me everything I've got and then some. 200 grand, maybe more when all is said and done. That's my entire savings, the money I was planning to live on when I can't handle the early mornings at the bakery anymore. But Danny wanted the fancy venue, The open bar, the sit-down dinner for 300 people, and Vivian had her heart set on those ridiculous centerpieces that cost more than most people make in a week. I said yes to everything because I thought it would make them happy, because I thought it would make me part of their day instead of just a witness to it. Now I'm standing here in a dress that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, getting ready to attend a wedding where I've been specifically told not to mention the thing that's defined my life for the past 15 years. Where I'll be sitting in the back like some distant aunt instead of right up front where the mother of the groom belongs. Where my son looks at me and sees shame instead of the woman who sacrificed everything to give him the opportunities that led him to this moment. The worst part is the hope I can't shake. Even now, even after that text, part of me thinks maybe it'll be different when I get there. Maybe when Danny sees me in this dress, looking my best, he'll remember that I'm his mother and not just some embarrassing relic from his past. Maybe Vivian will realize that I'm not trying to show anyone up or steal their thunder. I just want to be proud of my son on his wedding day. But deep down, in that place where you keep the truths you don't want to face, I know better. This dress isn't going to change anything. I could show up in a designer gown or a potato sack, and it wouldn't matter. They've already decided who I am in their story, and it's not the leading lady. I smooth the teal fabric one more time and hang the dress back in the closet. Tomorrow's the big day, whether I'm ready or not. I can still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, 15 years ago, and Henry was sitting at our kitchen table with a stack of medical bills spread out like a poker hand nobody wanted to play. The fluorescent light above us was flickering the way it always did when it was about to die, casting these weird shadows across his face that made him look older than his 50 years. He'd just come back from Dr. Patterson's office with news that hit us like a freight train, stage 3 lung cancer, and the treatment was gonna cost us everything we had, and then some. "Miriam, we're gonna lose the house," he said, his voice so quiet I had to lean forward to catch every word. Henry was never one for drama, never the type to sugarcoat things or make them sound worse than they were. That's how I knew he was scared as hell, because scared was the one thing Henry Cole never let himself be in front of me and Danny. I looked around our kitchen. The one with the chipped linoleum floor and the cabinets that stuck when it rained, and tried to figure out how we'd gone from comfortable to broke in the span of a single doctor's appointment. Henry's job at the auto parts store provided decent insurance, but decent doesn't mean jack when you're talking about cancer treatment. We had maybe 10 grand in savings, which sounds like a lot until you realize that chemotherapy costs more per session than most people make in a month. Danny was 14 then, all elbows and attitude, more concerned with making the JV basketball team than understanding why his parents were whispering behind closed doors every night. He deserved better than watching us fall apart financially while his dad fought for his life. He deserved college, opportunities, a future that didn't involve scraping together quarters for lunch money. That's when I remembered my grandmother's recipe box, the one that had been sitting in our basement for years collecting dust and probably a few spiders. Grandma Rosie had run a small bakery back in the day, nothing fancy, just good bread and pastries for the folks in her neighborhood. I'd grown up helping her knead dough and roll out pie crusts, learning the kind of cooking that comes from muscle memory instead of measuring cups. What if I started baking? I asked Henry that night as we lay in bed, both of us staring at the ceiling like it held all the answers we needed. I could sell stuff to the coffee shops downtown, maybe do some catering on the side. Henry turned over to face me, and even in the dark I could see him trying to smile. "Honey, you make great cookies, but running a business is a whole different animal." He wasn't wrong. I'd been working part-time at the library for years, helping people find books and fixing the copy machine when it jammed, which was basically every other day. I knew how to balance a checkbook and organize things, but I'd never run so much as a lemonade stand. The idea of starting a bakery from scratch seemed about as realistic as sprouting wings and flying to the moon. But desperation makes you do crazy things, and we were desperate as they come. I spent the next week driving around town, talking to every coffee shop and restaurant owner who'd give me 5 minutes. Most of them looked at me like I was selling snake oil, this middle-aged librarian claiming she could provide fresh bread and pastries at competitive prices. But Tom Martinez at Corner Cup Coffee was willing to take a chance, mainly because his current supplier kept showing up late and his croissants tasted like cardboard. I started small, really small. Every morning at 4:30, I'd roll out of bed and head to our tiny kitchen, mixing dough and preheating our ancient oven that took 20 minutes to reach the right temperature. By 6, I'd have 3 dozen muffins and a couple loaves of bread ready to deliver. Tom's customers started asking where he was getting his new baked goods, and word spread the way it does in small towns, quickly and with a lot of embellishment. Within 2 months, I was supplying 3 coffee shops and had a waiting list of people wanting me to cater their office meetings and birthday parties. The money wasn't much at first, maybe a couple hundred a week, but it was something when something was more than we'd had before. Henry's treatments were draining our savings faster than I could replenish them, but at least we weren't sinking quite as quickly. The irony was that I'd always wanted to be an artist. Back in high school, I was the kid who spent lunch period in the art room, painting landscapes and portraits that my teacher said showed real promise. I dreamed of having my own studio someday, maybe selling paintings at those fancy galleries in Grand Rapids. But life has a way of laughing at your dreams, and by the time I married Henry and had Danny, those art supplies were packed away in boxes marked someday. Now I was creating with flour instead of paint, shaping dough instead of clay. It wasn't what I'd imagined for myself, but there was something satisfying about watching people's faces when they bit into one of my cinnamon rolls or took their first sip of coffee alongside a slice of my banana bread. I was feeding people, nourishing them in the most basic way possible, and that felt important even when my back was screaming from hunching over mixing bowls all night. As Henry's condition got worse, the bakery became more than just a source of income, it was my lifeline. When I couldn't sleep because I was listening for changes in his breathing, I'd head downstairs and knead bread until my arms ached. When the medical bills kept coming even after the insurance had paid their share, I'd experiment with new recipes and dream about expanding into a real storefront someday. By the time Henry passed away, Flower and Hearth was more than just a side business. It was my identity. Every loaf I baked carried the weight of our story, the dreams we'd had to put on hold, the sacrifices we'd made to keep our family afloat. I wasn't just Miriam Cole anymore. I was the baker who got up before dawn to make sure people had something warm and comforting to start their day. And Danny? Danny got to finish high school without worrying about money, got his college tuition paid for with bread money and cake profits, got launched into a successful career because his mother learned to turn flour and water into something that could feed a family and fund a future. But apparently, that's not something worth mentioning at his wedding. The morning of the wedding, I wake up at 5:30 out of habit, even though there's no bread to bake today. My internal clock doesn't care that it's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It just knows that this is when I usually start my day, when I'd normally be elbow deep in sourdough starter and wondering if I ordered enough blueberries for the weekend rush. Instead, I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to psyche myself up for what feels more like a performance than a celebration. I get to the venue early because that's what mothers do. We show up, we help out, we make sure everything runs smoothly even when nobody asks us to. The Grandview Country Club is exactly as pretentious as it sounds, with its manicured lawns and valet parking and the kind of staff that looks right through you unless you're wearing the right kind of jewelry. I'm carrying the emergency kit I put together last night. Safety pins, stain remover, tissues, breath mints, and a flask of bourbon that I'm definitely gonna need before this day is over. Vivian's already there with her mother, both of them dressed like they're attending a royal wedding instead of my son's marriage. Mrs. Price is wearing this cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and she's got pearls the size of grapes around her neck. They're standing in the main hall with the wedding planner, a stick-thin woman named Celeste who talks like she's doing everyone a huge favor by breathing the same air as them. "Oh, Miriam." Vivian calls out when she spots me, and I can hear that fake cheerfulness from 50 feet away. "Thank goodness you're here. We need to talk about a few tiny changes to the seating arrangement." Tiny changes. That's rich. I walk over with a smile plastered on my face, the same smile I use when customers complain that my muffins are too sweet or not sweet enough, depending on what kind of mood they're in that day. Sure, honey, what's going on? Celeste pulls out her tablet and starts swiping through seating charts like she's conducting a symphony orchestra. So we've had to accommodate some last-minute additions to the Price family guest list, and we want to make sure everyone has the best possible experience. What she means is that more important people showed up than expected, and somebody's gotta get bumped to make room. 3 guesses who that somebody is. Your new table is right here, she says, pointing to a spot that might as well be in the parking lot. Table 12 has a perfect view of the back of everyone else's heads and is positioned right next to the swinging doors where the waitstaff will be rushing in and out all night long. It's actually quite lovely. You'll be with some of Daniel's college friends and their wives. Very fun group. Fun group, my ass. These are people Danny barely keeps in touch with, the ones who get Christmas cards, but not phone calls. The ones who probably couldn't pick me out of a lineup if their lives depended on it. But I nod and smile because that's what you do when you're being managed instead of included. And there's one more teensy thing, Vivian continues, and I can tell by the way she's fidgeting with her engagement ring that this teensy thing is going to be about as tiny as the Grand Canyon. The photographer mentioned that family photos might run a little long today, so we were thinking it might be easier if you just joined us for the ceremony and maybe skip the cocktail hour. That way you won't have to stand around waiting, and you can relax before dinner. I blink at her, trying to process what she's actually saying. Skip the cocktail hour. The part where families mingle and take pictures and celebrate together. The part where the mother of the groom is supposed to be front and center, accepting congratulations and basking in the glow of her son's happiness. She's basically asking me to show up for that I do part and then disappear until it's time to eat. I don't mind waiting around, I say, still smiling even though my face is starting to hurt from the effort. I mean, how often do I get to celebrate my only son's wedding? Mrs. Price jumps in then, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that rich people mistake for kindness. Oh, Miriam, you're so sweet to offer, but honestly, wedding photography can be such a tedious process. Hours and hours of standing in uncomfortable shoes, trying to look natural while the photographer adjusts lighting and poses. At our age, wouldn't you rather save your energy for the reception? Our age. Like we're both shuffling around with walkers instead of being perfectly capable 60-something women. Like I haven't been on my feet for 12 hours a day, every day, for the past 15 years running my own business. But what really gets me is the way she says it, like she's doing me some kind of favor by excluding me from my own son's wedding photos. I think I can handle a few pictures, I say, and there's an edge to my voice now that I can't quite hide. I've been looking forward to this day for months. Vivian and her mother exchange one of those looks that women share when they think they're being subtle, but are actually about as subtle as a brick through a window. It's the look that says, how do we get rid of this problem without causing a scene? Of course you can handle it, Vivian says, reaching out to pat my arm like I'm some kind of confused elderly relative. We're just trying to make everything as smooth as possible for everyone involved. You understand. I understand, all right. I understand that I'm not everyone, I'm someone. Someone inconvenient, someone who doesn't fit into their picture-perfect narrative of upward mobility and social climbing. Someone whose 15 years of getting up at dawn to build a business that put their precious groom through college isn't worth mentioning in polite company. The thing that really kills me is that Danny's nowhere to be seen during this conversation. He's probably off somewhere getting his hair styled or his shoes shined, completely oblivious to the fact that his fiancée and future mother-in-law are systematically erasing his actual mother from his wedding day. Or maybe he's not oblivious at all. Maybe this is exactly what he wants, and he's letting them be the bad guys so his hands stay clean. You know what? I say, stepping back from their little huddle. Why don't I just go check on the flowers or something? Let you ladies work out all these tiny details. I walk away before they can respond, my heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown timer. In the ladies' room, I splash cold water on my face and stare at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me is wearing a beautiful teal dress and perfectly applied makeup, but her eyes look like someone just told her that everything she thought she knew about her life was wrong. I'm not invisible, I tell myself. I'm Daniel's mother. I built something from nothing. I matter. But as I head back out to find my seat at table 12, I can't shake the feeling that they've already made me disappear. The bills keep coming like waves hitting the shore, relentless, predictable, and getting bigger every damn time. I'm sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, scrolling through my bank account while trying not to have a complete meltdown. The numbers don't lie, even when you want them to. $215,000. That's what Danny's fairy tale wedding has cost me so far, and we're still 3 weeks out from the big day. I click through the payments I've made over the past 6 months, each one feeling like a little piece of my future getting chipped away. 15 grand for the venue deposit. 22,000 for catering, and that was after I talked them down from the premium package that included some ridiculous ice sculpture shaped like swans. 12,000 for flowers, because apparently regular roses aren't good enough when you can get imported peonies that'll be dead in 3 days. 8,000 for the photographer, who better be Ansel Adams reincarnated for that kind of money. The dress alone, Vivian's dress, cost more than most people's cars. $4,000 for a piece of white fabric that she'll wear for 1 day and then stuff in a closet somewhere to yellow with age. I tried not to react when she showed me the price tag, tried to play it cool like dropping 4 grand on a dress was no big deal for a small-town baker. But inside, I was calculating how many loaves of bread I'd have to bake to earn that money back. Roughly 2,000 loaves, if you're wondering. That's working 7 days a week for about 3 months straight. Then there's the bar tab, which is gonna run me another 15 grand easy, because God forbid someone has to pay for their own drinks at a wedding. The DJ costs more than my monthly mortgage payment. The centerpieces, those ridiculous tall arrangements that nobody can see over, are running me $300 a pop, and there are 35 tables. Do the math on that nightmare. I pour myself a cup of coffee and lean back in my chair, trying to figure out when exactly I lost my mind and decided that bankrupting myself was a reasonable way to show love for my son. The original budget we talked about was maybe 50 grand, which seemed like a lot at the time, but at least wouldn't have wiped out my entire life savings. But then Vivian started talking about her dream wedding and Danny started using phrases like once-in-a-lifetime event, and we want you to be proud of us, and somehow 50 turned into 100, then 100 turned into 200, and now I'm staring at financial ruin with a smile on my face. The worst part is that I was stupid enough to think this would buy me something. Not love, I know you can't buy that, but maybe respect. Maybe a seat at the grown-ups table instead of being shuffled off to the corner like some embarrassing relative. Maybe the chance to feel like I mattered in my own son's life instead of just being the woman who writes the checks. A knock at my door interrupts my pity party, and I look up to see Ava waving at me through the screen. My sister Carol's daughter is 26 and in her final year of med school, which means she's broke as hell but smart as a whip. She's also the only member of my family who still acts like she actually likes spending time with me. "Hey, Aunt Miriam," she says, letting herself in the way she always does. "Hope you don't mind me stopping by. Mom sent me over with some of her famous potato salad for you to try." Ava sets a container on my counter, but I can tell by the way she's avoiding eye contact that potato salad isn't the real reason she's here. She's got that look people get when they know something you don't, and they're trying to figure out how to tell you without causing a complete breakdown. "What's going on, sweetheart?" I ask, closing my laptop so she can't see the financial carnage displayed on my screen. She fidgets with her car keys for a minute, then takes a deep breath like she's about to jump off a diving board. "I was at the bridal salon yesterday with my friend Jessica. She's getting married next month, and I overheard Vivian talking to her mom and sister. My stomach drops like I'm on a roller coaster because nothing good ever starts with 'I overheard.'" "What did you hear?" I ask, even though I'm not sure I want to know the answer. Ava sits down across from me and reaches for my hands. "They were talking about you, Aunt Miriam. About the wedding and after." "After what?" "After the wedding. Vivian was saying something about how they need to handle the mother situation once they get back from their honeymoon. Her mom suggested that maybe Danny should have a conversation with you about boundaries and expectations going forward." The words hit me like a slap across the face. The mother situation. That's what I am to them, not a person, not family, just a situation that needs to be handled. Like I'm some kind of problem that's gonna disappear if they manage me correctly. What kind of boundaries? I hear myself asking, even though part of me already knows. Ava looks miserable, like she wishes she could take back what she just said. Something about limiting contact, maybe establishing some distance so you don't get too involved in their marriage. Vivian said something about how some mothers-in-law can be overwhelming. Overwhelming. Right. Because wanting to be part of my son's life makes me some kind of clingy nightmare instead of a normal mother who loves her kid. I get up and walk to the window, looking out at the street where I've lived for 23 years, where I built my business and raised my son and buried my husband. Everything looks the same as it did an hour ago, but somehow it all feels different now. Like I've been living in some kind of fool's paradise, thinking that love and sacrifice and financial generosity could buy me a place in my own son's future. There's more, Ava says quietly. Of course there is. Because when your world is already falling apart, there's always room for it to get worse. Vivian's sister asked what they were going to do if you expected to be involved with grandkids someday, you know, babysitting and family holidays and stuff like that. And Vivian just laughed and said something about how they'd cross that bridge when they came to it, but they weren't planning on being one of those families where the grandmother is always underfoot. $215,000. That's what I paid to find out that my future doesn't include grandchildren's birthday parties or Christmas mornings or any of the things I've been imagining since Danny first brought Vivian home 2 years ago. I paid for the privilege of being managed, minimized, and eventually discarded like an embarrassing relic from their past. I turn back to Ava, who's watching me with the kind of concern you'd show someone standing on a ledge. Thank you for telling me, I say, and I mean it. I needed to know. What are you going to do? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or in this case, the $215,000 question. What do you do when you realize you've been paying for your own dismissal? When the people you love most see you as a problem to be solved instead of a person to be cherished? I don't know yet, but for the first time in months, my head is starting to clear. The rehearsal dinner is being held at Romano's, the fanciest Italian restaurant in town, which isn't saying much since Havenwood's idea of fine dining usually involves a salad bar and cloth napkins. But Vivian insisted on somewhere elegant for their closest family and friends, so here I am in my navy blue dress and good pearls, trying to pretend I belong at a table full of people who look at me like I wandered in from the wrong party. I arrive exactly on time because that's what you do when you're raised right, but apparently punctuality is another one of my embarrassing small-town habits. The Prices are already here, holding court at the bar like they own the place, and I can see Vivian's college sorority sisters clustered together near the window, all of them wearing the kind of casual but expensive outfits that cost more than most people's rent. Danny's groomsmen are doing shots at the other end of the bar, getting a head start on tomorrow's hangover. Nobody rushes over to greet me. Nobody waves me over to join their conversation. I stand there for a solid 2 minutes, clutching my purse and trying to figure out where exactly I fit into this tableau, before the hostess finally notices me and asks if I'm part of the Cole Price party. Like it's not obvious from the fact that I'm the only person over 50 who's standing alone looking lost. Miriam. Vivian finally spots me and waves me over to where she's standing with her bridesmaids. You look lovely. Girls, this is Danny's mom. Danny's mom. Not Miriam, not the woman who's paying for this whole damn celebration, just Danny's mom, like that's the only thing worth knowing about me. The bridesmaids smile those polite smiles that don't reach their eyes and murmur the kind of generic compliments you give to someone you're never gonna see again after tomorrow. I'm assigned to a table in the middle of the room, which sounds better than it is until you realize it means I'm surrounded by people on all sides who are having conversations I'm not part of. Danny's college roommate is on my left, talking to his wife about their recent trip to Europe. Vivian's aunt is on my right, explaining to anyone who'll listen why her grandson's high school lacrosse team is definitely going to state this year. I smile and nod and contribute the occasional, "That's wonderful," or "How exciting," but mostly I just sit there feeling like I'm watching a movie where everyone else knows the plot except me. The toasts start after the main course, and I listen to speech after speech about what a perfect couple Danny and Vivian are, how they're made for each other, how their love story gives everyone hope for the future. Danny's best man tells a hilarious story about the time they got lost in Vegas and ended up sleeping in the rental car. Vivian's maid of honor talks about how she knew Danny was the one the first time Vivian brought him home for Christmas. Nobody mentions me. Nobody talks about how Danny was raised, or where he came from, or the sacrifices that got him to this point in his life. It's like he materialized fully formed at age 22 when he met Vivian, with no history or family or struggles that shaped who he is today. Then Mr. Price stands up to give his toast, and I can tell from his satisfied smile that he's been looking forward to this moment all night. He talks about welcoming Danny into their family, about how proud they are to have such a successful young man marrying their daughter. He mentions Danny's job at the consulting firm, his MBA from Northwestern, his bright future ahead. He talks about the values that Danny brings to their family: integrity, ambition, the drive to succeed. And of course, Mr. Price continues, raising his glass toward our table. We're grateful to all the family members who helped shape Daniel into the man he is today. All the family members. Plural. Like there's some village of people who raised my son instead of one woman who worked her ass off to make sure he had opportunities she never did. When Danny finally stands up to give his own toast, my heart does this little flutter thing that it's been doing since he was born, and I realized that loving someone this much could actually physically hurt sometimes. This is my boy, my baby, the kid who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms and insist that I read him one more story before bedtime. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he starts, and his voice carries across the room with the kind of confidence that comes from never doubting you belong wherever you are. Vivian and I are so lucky to be surrounded by people who love and support us. He thanks the Prices for welcoming him into their family. He thanks his groomsmen for standing by him tomorrow. He thanks Vivian for being his best friend and his future. He's about halfway through his speech when I realize he's going to wrap up without mentioning me at all. So I do something I probably shouldn't do, but I'm 3 glasses of wine in and my filter isn't working as well as it usually does. When he pauses to take a sip of champagne, I stand up and clear my throat. I'd like to add something, I say, and the room gets quiet in that uncomfortable way that happens when someone goes off script at a formal event. Danny's face goes through about 6 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds, but he forces a smile and gestures for me to continue. Of course, Mom. The floor is yours. I look around the room at all these people who barely know I exist, and I decide to tell them about the Danny they've never heard about. The Danny who used to help me fold laundry when he was 8 years old because he knew I was tired after working double shifts at the library. The Danny who cried when we had to put our dog Rex to sleep and insisted on burying him in the backyard with a headstone he made himself out of a flat piece of wood and a wood-burning kit. The Danny who came home from college every other weekend his freshman year because he was worried about me being alone in the house for the first time since his father died. Danny's always been the kind of person who sees what needs to be done and does it, I say, warming up to my theme. When his father got sick, Danny was only 14, but he stepped up like a man twice his age. He'd come home from school and help me in the kitchen, learning to knead bread dough so I could get orders finished faster. He never complained, never acted like it was beneath him to work in a bakery. That's when I noticed the look on Danny's face. It's not embarrassment or annoyance, it's panic. Pure, undiluted panic, like I just announced to the room that he used to wet the bed until he was 12. Mom, he says, cutting me off mid-sentence. Maybe we should save the childhood stories for another time. But I'm not done. I'm just getting started on 18 years worth of stories about what an amazing kid I raised, about all the ways he made me proud before he decided I was something to be ashamed of. I'm just saying that the young man sitting here tonight didn't get here by accident. I continue, my voice getting a little louder as the wine kicks in. Every opportunity he's had, every door that opened for him, it started with, "Mom, stop." Danny's voice cuts through the room like a knife, sharp enough that conversations at other tables pause mid-sentence. "Please, just stop." The silence that follows is deafening. Everyone's staring at us. Some with curiosity, some with pity, all of them suddenly way too interested in the family drama playing out in real time. I can feel my face burning with embarrassment and something else, something that feels dangerously close to rage. Vivian jumps into the silence with a bright laugh that sounds about as natural as a car alarm. Well, I think we've all had enough speeches for one night. Who's ready for dessert? But the damage is done. I've committed the ultimate sin in Vivian's world. I've caused a scene. I've disrupted the perfect evening she had planned, brought up topics that don't fit her narrative, reminded everyone that her fiancé comes from somewhere she'd rather forget. I sit back down without saying another word, but I can feel Danny's eyes on me for the rest of the night. Not with love or gratitude or any of the things I was hoping for. With something that looks a lot like resentment. When the evening finally ends and people start saying their goodbyes, Danny walks over to my table with the kind of determined stride that means he's got something to get off his chest. "We need to talk," he says, and his tone makes it clear this isn't a request. He leads me outside to the parking lot, where the October air is cold enough to make me wish I'd brought a jacket, but not cold enough to cool down the anger that's been building in my chest all night. "What the hell was that in there?" he asks, and I can see his breath in little puffs as he talks. "That was me being proud of my son," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "That was me wanting people to know where you came from and what you've accomplished." "No, Mom, that was you embarrassing me in front of my future in-laws. That was you making everything about you and your bakery when tonight was supposed to be about me and Vivian." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but what really kills me is the way he says, "your bakery," like it's something dirty, something shameful that I should have the decency to hide. "I'm sorry," I say, and I mean it, even though I'm not entirely sure what I'm apologizing for. "I just wanted." "I know what you wanted," Danny interrupts. "But tomorrow's my wedding day, and I need you to promise me something. I need you to promise that you'll just blend in. Don't make speeches, don't tell stories, don't do anything that's going to make this about you instead of about us." I stare at my son, this man I raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, and I realize that somewhere along the way, I've become the villain in his story. The embarrassing mother who doesn't know when to shut up, who doesn't understand that her love is supposed to be invisible, who needs to be managed and contained so she doesn't ruin the perfect life he's built. And if I can't do that? I ask, because suddenly I need to know exactly where we stand. Danny looks at me for a long moment, and I can see him weighing his words carefully, like he's about to say something he can't take back. "Then maybe it would be better if you didn't come at all." I drive home from Romano's with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, Danny's words echoing in my head like a broken record. "Then maybe it would be better if you didn't come at all." 22 years of motherhood, reduced to that. 22 years of getting up at dawn, working until my back ached, putting his needs before mine every single day, and this is what I get. "Maybe it would be better if you didn't come at all." The house feels different when I walk through the door, like the walls heard what happened and are judging me for it. I kick off my heels and pour myself a glass of wine, a big one, and sit down at my kitchen table with all those damn wedding invoices spread out in front of me like evidence of my own stupidity. $215,000, and for what? So my son can tell me I'm an embarrassment? So I can pay for the privilege of being uninvited to my own kid's wedding? The final payment is due tomorrow morning. $50,000 to cover the remaining catering balance, the bar service, and some last-minute additions that Vivian just had to have: upgraded linens, extra floral arrangements, premium wine instead of the house stuff that was apparently too pedestrian for her guests. 50 grand that I don't have without liquidating what's left of my retirement account. The money I was planning to live on when I'm too old to get up at 4:30 every morning and pretend my knees don't hurt. I pull out my laptop and log into my bank account, staring at the numbers that represent 30 years of marriage, 15 years of widowhood, and more early mornings than I can count. This is my life savings, the security I built one loaf of bread at a time, and I'm about to hand it over to people who see me as a problem to be solved. But something stops me from hitting that transfer button. Maybe it's the wine, or maybe it's the memory of Danny's face when he told me to blend in, like I'm some kind of embarrassing stain on his perfect new life. Maybe it's Ava's voice telling me about Vivian's plan to handle the mother situation after the honeymoon. Or maybe I'm just finally tired of being taken for granted by the person I love most in the world. Instead of transferring the money, I pick up my phone and call Jim Morrison, not the dead rock star, but my lawyer, who's been handling my business paperwork since I opened Flower and Hearth. It's almost 10 o'clock on a Friday night, but Jim's one of those small-town lawyers who gives out his cell phone number and actually answers it. Miriam? His voice is groggy, like I woke him up. Everything okay? This isn't really your usual calling time. Jim, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. If someone's paid for a wedding, deposits, vendors, the whole 9 yards, and then they decide not to attend, what happens to the money? There's a pause on the other end of the line, and I can practically hear him trying to figure out what kind of family drama he's about to get dragged into. Well, that depends on a lot of factors, he says carefully. Who's the contracting party? What do the vendor agreements say about cancellation? Are we talking about the whole wedding or just? I'm the one who signed the contracts, I interrupt. Everything's in my name because I'm the one paying for it. And I'm not talking about canceling the whole thing, just my participation in it. My son made it pretty clear tonight that my presence is optional. Another pause, longer this time. Miriam, are you sure about this? Wedding emotions run high, and people say things they don't mean. He meant it, Jim. Trust me. I can hear him moving around, probably getting out of bed and looking for a pen and paper. Okay, if you're the contracting party, then technically you have the right to make changes up to the point where services are rendered. But most vendors are going to keep their money regardless, especially this close to the event. The caterers already bought the food, the florists already arranged the flowers. I'm not trying to get my money back, I say, and hearing myself say it out loud makes something click into place in my brain. I just want to make sure I'm not legally obligated to pay the final installment if I choose not to. Well, no, you're not obligated to pay money you haven't agreed to pay yet. But Miriam, we're talking about your son's wedding here. Are you really prepared to? What I'm prepared to do is stop letting people treat me like a walking ATM, I say, surprised by the steel in my own voice. If Danny doesn't want me at his wedding, then maybe Danny can figure out how to pay for his wedding. After I hang up with Jim, I sit there for a long time, staring at my laptop screen and thinking about choices. For the past 6 months, every decision about this wedding has been made for me. What I should wear, where I should sit, what I should say, what I shouldn't say, when I should show up, when I should disappear. I've gone along with it all because I thought that's what loving mothers do. They sacrifice their comfort, their dignity, their financial security for their children's happiness. But here's the thing about sacrifice. It only means something if it's appreciated, if it's valued. If the person you're sacrificing for sees it as an act of love instead of an obligation, something they're entitled to receive without question or gratitude. Danny doesn't see my contributions to his wedding as love, he sees them as payment for services rendered. And apparently, I'm not even performing those services to his satisfaction. So I make a different choice. Instead of transferring $50,000 to pay for a party I've been uninvited to, I open up a new browser window and start researching educational trust funds. It takes me about 20 minutes to find what I'm looking for: an irrevocable trust that can be established for Ava's medical school expenses, with me as the grantor and her as the sole beneficiary. The beauty of an irrevocable trust is right there in the name. Once it's established, I can't change my mind and take the money back, even if I wanted to. It'll be Ava's money, legally and completely, protected from any claims or debts or family drama that might come up down the road. Ava, who drove over here to warn me about Vivian's plans. Ava, who looks at me like I'm a person worth knowing instead of a problem to be managed. Ava, who's going to be a doctor someday and help people and make the world a better place, instead of just making it more profitable for consulting firms. I call Jim back. Change of plans, I tell him. I want to set up an educational trust fund. $50,000, irrevocable. Beneficiary is my niece Ava Chen. How fast can we make this happen? Miriam, it's 10:30 on a Friday night. Maybe you should sleep on this end. Jim, I've been sleeping on things my whole life, and look where it's gotten me. I want this done first thing Monday morning, before I lose my nerve or start feeling guilty or let anyone talk me out of it. There's another pause, and then Jim sighs the way people do when they realize you're not going to be talked out of something. Okay, I'll draw up the paperwork over the weekend. But Miriam, are you sure about this? Once this trust is established, that money's gone. You can't get it back if you change your mind. I look around my kitchen, at the bills spread across my table, at the empty wine glass that's not making me feel any better about the mess my life has become. Tomorrow is my son's wedding day, and I won't be there to see him make the biggest mistake of his life. Instead, I'll be here in my kitchen, probably baking bread because that's what I do when the world falls apart. I make things that nourish people, even when those people don't think I'm worth keeping around. I'm sure, Jim. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time. After I hang up, I pour myself another glass of wine and toast the empty kitchen. To new beginnings, I say out loud, and for the first time in months, I actually mean it. The final payment can wait. Hell, the final payment can wait forever. I wake up at 4:30 on Danny's wedding day, not because I have to, but because my body doesn't know any other way. For the first time in months, I don't feel that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, that sick feeling that comes from dreading something you're supposed to be excited about. Instead, I feel something I barely recognize, peace. Maybe it's the calm that comes after you've burned all your bridges, or maybe it's just the relief of finally knowing exactly where you stand with people. I make myself a cup of coffee and sit on my back porch in my bathrobe, watching the sun come up over Havenwood. It's one of those perfect October mornings where the air is crisp but not cold, and the trees are putting on their final show before winter strips them bare. In a few hours, Danny will be getting married, and I won't be there to see it. The thought should devastate me, but instead it just feels like accepting reality instead of fighting it. By 6 o'clock, I'm dressed and heading down to Flower and Hearth, because even though it's Saturday and I could stay home, I need to be where I make sense. The bakery is my sanctuary, the one place where I know exactly who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. The smell of yeast and flour and possibility fills my lungs as soon as I unlock the door, and for the first time in weeks, I feel like I can breathe normally. I don't have any orders to fill today. Saturday mornings are usually slow unless there's a special event, and the only special event in town is the one I'm not invited to. But I bake anyway, because that's what I do when the world gets too complicated. I start with sourdough, the kind that takes patience and faith, the kind that can't be rushed no matter how much you want it to cooperate. My hands know the rhythm without my brain having to think about it. Measure, mix, knead, rest, repeat. While the dough is rising, I make cinnamon rolls, the kind Danny used to beg for when he was little and I was still naive enough to think that love was enough to hold a family together. The kitchen fills with the smell of butter and cinnamon and brown sugar, and for a moment I let myself remember the good times. Saturday mornings when Danny was 8 or 9, standing on a stool beside me, trying to roll out dough that kept sticking to the counter. The way he'd sneak pieces of raw dough when he thought I wasn't looking, even though I always knew and pretended not to notice. Those memories hurt less than they used to, maybe because I'm finally accepting that the little boy who helped me bake cinnamon rolls isn't the same person as the man who told me not to come to his wedding. People change, sometimes in ways that break your heart, and all you can do is love the version of them that existed and let go of the version you thought they'd become. Around 9 o'clock, Mrs. Peterson from down the street taps on my window, and I wave her in. She's 82 and walks to the bakery every Saturday morning for a blueberry muffin and 10 minutes of conversation about whatever's happening in town. Miriam, honey, what are you doing here today? She asks, looking genuinely confused. Isn't this Danny's wedding day? Shouldn't you be getting your hair done or something? I hand her a fresh muffin and pour her a cup of coffee, the same ritual we've been following for 3 years now. Change of plans, Mrs. P. Turns out I'm not needed at the wedding after all. She gives me that look that elderly people perfect over the years, the one that sees right through whatever bullshit you're trying to sell and gets straight to the truth underneath. Not needed or not wanted, she asks, and there's no judgment in her voice, just the kind of directness that comes from being old enough not to waste time on polite fiction. Both, I guess, I say, and it feels good to say it out loud to someone who doesn't have a dog in this fight. Mrs. Peterson nods like this makes perfect sense to her. Well, their loss is our gain then. These muffins are better than anything they'll have at that fancy country club. Word spreads the way it does in small towns, through some mysterious network of gossip and genuine concern that operates faster than social media. By noon, my bakery is full of people who heard that Miriam Cole was working instead of attending her son's wedding, and they've decided to keep me company. Tom Martinez brings his wife and kids over from Corner Cup Coffee. The Hendersons, who buy all their birthday cakes from me, stop by with their grandson. Even Father Mackenzie from St. Mary's shows up, claiming he needs bread for Sunday communion, but really just wanting to make sure I'm okay. Nobody asks direct questions about what happened, because that's not how small-town kindness works. Instead, they just show up and fill my space with conversation and laughter and the kind of community that you don't realize you're missing until it wraps around you like a warm blanket. I give away everything I baked that morning: loaves of bread, cinnamon rolls, muffins, even the experimental apple turnovers that I wasn't sure were good enough to sell. People try to pay me, but I wave them off. Today isn't about money. Today is about remembering that there are different kinds of family, and sometimes the people who choose to love you are more reliable than the ones who are supposed to love you automatically. Around 2 o'clock, when Danny's ceremony is probably starting, Sarah Williams comes in with her 7-year-old daughter Emma. Sarah's a single mom who works 2 jobs and still brings Emma in here every few weeks for a cookie and a few minutes of air conditioning when money's tight. Emma always draws me pictures while her mom drinks coffee, usually stick figures with big smiles and houses with crooked chimneys. "Miss Miriam, why are you sad today?" Emma asks, because kids have radar for that kind of thing, even when you think you're hiding it well. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," I say, which is mostly true. "I'm just having a different kind of day than I expected." Emma considers this while she colors a picture of what looks like a bakery with a rainbow over it. "My teacher says that different doesn't mean bad. Sometimes different is better." Out of the mouths of babes, right? Different doesn't mean bad. Sometimes different is better. By evening, when the reception is probably in full swing 30 miles away, I'm sitting in my empty bakery with a cup of tea and a sense of contentment I haven't felt in months. My phone has been buzzing all day with texts and calls from people at the wedding. Carol wanting to know why I'm not there, a few of Danny's college friends who probably don't even remember my name asking where I am, even Jim Morrison checking to make sure I'm okay. I don't answer any of them. Let them wonder. Let them make up their own stories about why the mother of the groom is conspicuously absent from the biggest social event of the year. The truth is simpler and more complicated than whatever they're imagining. I'm not there because I finally learned the difference between being wanted and being needed, between love and obligation, between sacrifice and stupidity. My phone rings one more time as I'm locking up the bakery, and for a second my heart jumps, because maybe it's Danny. Maybe he realized what he's lost. Maybe he's calling to apologize and beg me to come to the reception, even if I miss the ceremony. But it's not Danny. It's Ava calling from the wedding. "Aunt Miriam, are you okay?" Everyone's asking where you are, and Danny looks like he's about to throw up. I smile as I walk to my car, keys jingling in my hand like a small celebration. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Having the best day I've had in months. But don't you want to be here? It's beautiful and the food is amazing and—" "Ava, honey, I am exactly where I want to be. And tomorrow, you and I are going to have a very interesting conversation about your future." I hang up and drive home through streets that look familiar, but somehow different, like I'm seeing my own town through new eyes. Tonight, while Danny and Vivian are dancing their first dance as husband and wife, I'm going to pour myself a glass of wine and start planning the rest of my life. A life where my worth isn't measured by how much I'm willing to sacrifice for people who don't appreciate the sacrifice. A life where I choose what matters, instead of letting other people choose for me. Different doesn't mean bad. Sometimes different is better. I'm standing at my kitchen window, watching the rain streak down the glass like tears I refuse to shed anymore, when the doorbell rings. 3 weeks have passed since that nightmare of a confrontation. 3 weeks since I watched my son's true colors bleed through his carefully constructed facade like watercolor on wet paper. 3 weeks of the kind of silence that should feel empty, but instead feels like the first deep breath after holding it underwater for 32 years. The doorbell rings again, more insistent this time, and I set down my coffee mug with hands that are steadier than they've been in months. My bare feet pad across the hardwood floors that Henry and I installed ourselves back when our dreams were small and our love was huge, back when we thought hard work and good intentions were enough to build a life on. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm walking across those same floors to face the wreckage of what we built together. Through the peephole, I see them. Daniel stands there looking like he's aged a decade in 3 weeks, his usually pristine appearance rumpled around the edges. His hair's grown out, no longer the perfectly styled businessman's cut, and there's a shadow of stubble that suggests he's forgotten how to take care of himself. But it's not Daniel that makes my breath catch, it's Vivian, standing slightly behind him, clutching a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket like it's the most precious thing in the world. My grandson. Little Henry Jr., named after the father Daniel spent years trying to erase from his memory and mine. I unlock the door but leave the chain latched, opening it just wide enough to see their faces clearly. Daniel's eyes are red-rimmed, and for a split second, I see the little boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knee, who used to believe I could fix anything with a kiss and a band-aid. But that little boy grew up to be a man who looked me in the eye and called me worthless, who threw his father's memory around like ammunition in a war I never signed up to fight. "Mom," he says, and his voice cracks on that single word like he's 12 again, and his voice is changing. "Please, can we come in? Just for a few minutes." I study his face, looking for the manipulation I've become so good at spotting, the calculated expressions that come so naturally to him now. But all I see is exhaustion and something that might be genuine regret if I'm feeling generous enough to believe it. Vivian shifts the baby, and he makes a small sound that goes straight through my chest like a bullet. "We need help," Vivian says quietly, speaking for the first time. Her voice is hoarse, like she's been crying or screaming or both. "We don't have anywhere else to go." The words hang in the air between us, heavy with implication. Daniel's pride must be completely shattered for him to show up here, hat in hand, asking for help from the woman he humiliated just 3 weeks ago. Part of me, the part that still remembers changing his diapers and teaching him to ride a bike and staying up all night when he had pneumonia, wants to throw open the door and welcome them in. But that part of me has been beaten down and used up, and what's left is stronger and smarter and done being anyone's safety net. I close the door just long enough to unlatch the chain, then open it fully. They step inside, and immediately the house feels smaller, like their presence is sucking up all the oxygen I've been learning to breathe freely. Daniel looks around at the space that used to be his home, his eyes lingering on the family photos I haven't had the heart to take down yet, the ones where we all look happy and whole, and like we actually liked each other. "The baby's beautiful," I say, because he is. Even from here, I can see Henry's nose, the same nose Daniel inherited, the same nose that made my husband look distinguished and my son look stubborn. "What's his name?" "Henry," Daniel says, and there's something almost defiant in the way he says it. "Henry Jr." The name hits me like a physical blow, and I have to grip the back of the sofa to keep from staggering. After everything he said about his father, after all the ways he tried to diminish Henry's memory, he named his son after him. The audacity of it, the sheer goddamn nerve, takes my breath away. "We lost the house," Vivian says when the silence stretches too long. "Daniel's been out of work for 2 months, and with the baby coming early and the medical bills." She trails off, shifting little Henry again. "We've been staying at my sister's, but she can't. She has 3 kids of her own, and we just need somewhere to stay for a few weeks." Daniel jumps in, his voice gaining strength like he's found his footing again. "Just until I can find something, get back on my feet. I know things were said, things we can't take back, but this isn't about us. This is about him." He nods toward the baby. "Your grandson." And there it is, the manipulation I was waiting for. Not direct enough to be obvious, but clear enough that I know exactly what game we're playing. Use the baby as leverage, appeal to my maternal instincts, make it about family obligation rather than the consequences of his own choices. It's a good strategy, actually. 3 weeks ago, it might have even worked. I look at this baby, this innocent little person who had the misfortune to be born to parents who think love is something you can turn on and off like a faucet, something you can withdraw when you're angry and expect back when you're desperate. I look at Daniel, who's watching me with the kind of hope that makes my chest ache, and at Vivian, who's probably a decent person caught up in circumstances she never saw coming. Love without respect is just a transaction, I say quietly, the words coming from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere that's been waiting 32 years to speak this truth. And I'm done being part of transactions. Daniel's face crumbles like I've physically struck him. Mom, please. We're sorry. I'm sorry. I was angry, and I said things. You said what you meant, I interrupt, and my voice is steady as bedrock. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou said that, and she was right. They leave in silence, Daniel's shoulders shaking in a way that might be sobs, Vivian clutching their baby like a shield against the cold world waiting outside my door. I watched them walk to their beat-up Honda. Daniel's BMW must have been repossessed along with everything else. And I feel exactly one tear slide down my cheek as they drive away. Just one. For the little boy who used to be my son, before he grew up to be a man I don't recognize. But as I close the door and slide the deadbolt home, something extraordinary happens. The house doesn't feel empty anymore, it feels spacious. The silence isn't hollow, it's peaceful. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm alone in my own home without feeling lonely. I'm free. The sold sign goes up on a Tuesday morning in October, and I stand on the front porch watching the real estate agent hammer it into the ground with more satisfaction than I probably should feel. This house, with its perfect suburban facade and its carefully maintained flower beds and its goddamn white picket fence that Henry installed because he thought it looked welcoming, has been my prison for longer than I care to admit. Now it's just bricks and mortar and someone else's problem. You sure about this, Mrs. Richardson? Janet, my realtor, asks for probably the 15th time since I signed the papers. She's a sweet woman in her 50s who keeps looking at me like I might be having some kind of breakdown, selling the family home and all. It's a big change, living somewhere completely different after all these years. I laugh, and it sounds lighter than anything that's come out of my mouth in months. Honey, I haven't been this sure about anything since I said yes to Henry's proposal 34 years ago. The lakeside condo I'm moving to is everything this suburban monument to false happiness isn't. It's smaller, brighter, and faces west, so I can watch the sunset paint the water every evening like God's own art show. When I first walked through it 3 weeks ago, something in my chest literally unclenched for the first time in years. The master bedroom has floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over Lake Meridian, and there's a room, a whole damn room, that gets morning light so perfect it made my fingers itch for a paintbrush. I haven't painted in 23 years. Not since Daniel was 9 and decided my art supplies cluttered up the dining room table. Not since I convinced myself that being a good mother meant sacrificing every piece of who I used to be on the altar of family respectability. But standing in that sun-soaked room, I could practically smell the turpentine and feel the weight of a brush in my hand again. The moving truck pulls away at 4 in the afternoon, leaving me standing in my new living room surrounded by boxes that somehow look less like burdens and more like possibilities. I've kept only what brings me joy, a concept that sounds like self-help bullshit until you actually try it and realize how much crap you've been dragging around out of guilt or habit or sheer inertia. Gone is the formal dining room set that we used exactly 12 times in 32 years. Gone are Daniel's Little League trophies and school photos, the visual reminders of a relationship that exists now only in my rearview mirror. Gone is Henry's recliner, the one I used to preserve like a shrine, because loving someone's memory doesn't mean living in a museum to your grief. What remains fits perfectly in this bright, airy space. My grandmother's quilts, the books I actually read instead of the ones that looked impressive on shelves, and Henry's guitar, which I've finally decided to learn to play because why the hell not? I spend the first week just existing in this new space, learning its rhythms like you would a new lover. The way the morning light creeps across the hardwood floors. The sound the lake makes when the wind picks up in the afternoon. The blessed silence that comes from not having neighbors close enough to judge whether I'm grieving properly or moving on too fast or living my life in any way that doesn't meet their expectations. On Thursday, I drive past Flower and Hearth on my way to buy paint supplies, actual art supplies, not the wall painting kind, and I'm amazed to find myself smiling instead of crying. The young couple who bought it from me, Jake and Maria Santos, have kept the original sign but added their own touches. There are string lights in the windows now, and they've painted the trim a warm golden yellow that makes the whole place look like it's glowing from the inside. I pull into the parking lot because I can't help myself, because this place was my baby before I learned that some babies grow up to break your heart, and I need to see what they've done with it. The bell still chimes when I walk in, but everything else is deliciously different. They've rearranged the seating to create more intimate spaces, added local artwork to the walls, and the smell. God, the smell is exactly right. Yeast and cinnamon and coffee, and that indefinable scent of happiness that comes from people doing work they love. Mrs. Richardson. Maria calls out from behind the counter, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. She's probably 35, with laugh lines around her eyes and flour permanently embedded under her fingernails, the mark of a true baker. How are you settling in? Jake, look who's here. Jake emerges from the kitchen, wiping his hands on an apron that says, "Life's too short for bad bread," and I'm struck by how much they remind me of Henry and me at that age. The way they move around each other without getting in each other's way, the shorthand communication that comes from being true partners, the shared dream made manifest in rising dough and perfect espresso. The place looks incredible, I tell them, and I mean it. You've made it your own while keeping its soul. That's not easy to do. We learned from the master, Jake says with a grin that makes him look about 25. Your recipe books are like our Bible. Maria practically has your cinnamon roll technique memorized. They insist on making me a latte and a fresh scone, and I sit in the corner booth, my old thinking spot, watching them work. There's a steady stream of customers, familiar faces mixed with new ones, and everyone seems genuinely happy to be here. This isn't just a business transaction. It's a community gathering place, exactly what Henry and I dreamed it could be back when we were young and idealistic and thought love conquered all. You did something beautiful here, Maria says, sliding into the booth across from me during a brief lull. Jake and I, we met in culinary school, and we always talked about having a place like this someday. When you put it up for sale, it felt like fate. I think about fate, about the strange way life circles back on itself when you're not looking. 6 months ago, I was trapped in a marriage to a ghost and a relationship with a son who saw me as nothing more than a convenient scapegoat. Now I'm sitting in my former bakery, watching 2 kids live out the dream I thought I'd lost forever, and instead of feeling bitter or nostalgic, I just feel proud. Can I ask you something? Maria leans forward, lowering her voice. How did you know when it was time to let go? Of this place, I mean. It must have been so hard. I consider the question, rolling it around in my mind like a piece of sea glass, worn smooth by time and tumbling. Honey, holding on to something because you're afraid of what comes next isn't love, it's fear. And fear makes everything smaller, including you. She nods like this makes perfect sense, and maybe it does to someone who's never spent decades convincing herself that sacrifice and self-erasure are the same thing as love. I drive home with the sunset turning the lake into liquid gold, my back seat loaded with canvases and paints and brushes that feel like old friends returning from a long journey. Tonight, I'll set up my easel in that perfect morning room and remember what it feels like to create something beautiful just because I can, just because it brings me joy, just because I'm finally free enough to believe I deserve to take up space in my own life. Ava calls while I'm unpacking art supplies, her voice bright with excitement about her residency match. Pediatric surgery at Johns Hopkins, exactly what she's dreamed of since she was 16 and shadowing doctors at the local hospital. I can't believe it's really happening, she says, and I can hear her grinning through the phone. The trust you set up, Aunt Miriam. I don't know how to thank you. You don't, I tell her, holding up a tube of cadmium yellow to the evening light. You just live the hell out of your life and remember that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is believe they're capable of amazing things. After we hang up, I stand in my bright new kitchen, looking out at the water, and I feel something I haven't felt in so long I almost don't recognize it, anticipation. For tomorrow, for the painting I'll start, for the version of myself I'm becoming, for all the beautiful unknowns waiting to unfold. I'm 63 years old, and I'm finally growing up. The letter arrives on a Thursday morning in March, exactly 5 years to the day since little Henry Jr. took his first breath and changed everything. I know this because I've been keeping track, not obsessively, not the way I used to mark Daniel's milestones when he was small, but with the quiet awareness that comes from understanding how time moves differently when you're living your life instead of just surviving it. I'm standing at my easel, working on a painting of the lake at dawn, when I hear the mail truck rumble past. My hands are covered in cerulean blue and titanium white, the colors of morning light on water, and I almost don't go check the mailbox. Almost. But something makes me set down my brush and wipe my hands on the old t-shirt I use as a painting smock, one of Henry's, actually, soft from years of washing and still carrying the faintest hint of his cologne. The mailbox holds the usual suspects. A utility bill, some catalog for overpriced home goods that thinks I need throw pillows to validate my existence, and one envelope that makes my heart skip a beat before I've even registered what I'm looking at. My name written in careful cursive across cream-colored paper, the kind you buy when you want your words to matter. The return address is one I don't recognize, somewhere in Colorado, but the handwriting. God, the handwriting takes me back 35 years to elementary school parent-teacher conferences and birthday cards and grocery lists stuck to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets. Daniel's handwriting, but careful now in a way it never used to be. Deliberate, like each letter has been considered and reconsidered before committing ink to paper. I carry the letter inside like it might explode, setting it on the kitchen counter next to my coffee mug while I stare at it and try to decide if I'm ready for whatever's inside. 5 years. 5 years since I closed my door on them, since I chose self-respect over family obligation, since I learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just enabling dressed up in prettier clothes. The painting can wait. I pour myself a fresh cup of coffee, add the splash of cream that I finally admitted I like after years of drinking it black because Henry preferred it that way, and settle into the armchair by the window where the morning light is soft and forgiving. The envelope opens easily, and I unfold 2 sheets of paper covered in that same careful handwriting. My hands are steadier than I expected them to be. Dear Mom, it begins, and already I can feel the difference. Not the angry, entitled tone of our last conversation, not the manipulation disguised as affection that I learned to recognize too late. Just quiet. Humble, maybe. I'm writing this on Henry's 5th birthday, and I keep thinking about something you said the last time we talked. You said that love without respect is just a transaction, and I've been trying to understand what that means for 5 years now. I think I'm finally starting to get it. I pause, looking out at the lake where a pair of mallards are teaching their ducklings to dive for food. The babies are clumsy, more enthusiasm than skill, but their parents are patient, demonstrating over and over until the little ones get it right. There's something beautiful about that kind of teaching, the way it comes from love instead of obligation, from wanting someone to succeed instead of needing them to comply. I've been in therapy for 3 years now, the letter continues. Not court-ordered or anything like that, I chose it. Finally figured out that maybe the problem wasn't everyone else, maybe it was me. Dr. Martinez, my therapist, she's helped me understand some things about anger and grief, and the ways we hurt the people who love us when we can't face hurting ourselves. 3 years in therapy. My son, who used to think asking for help was a sign of weakness, who inherited his father's stubborn pride along with his nose and his way of humming when he's concentrating. I feel something shift in my chest, not quite hope, but not quite its opposite either. I talk about you a lot in therapy. About Dad too. I've been working on understanding why I was so angry at both of you, why I needed to make you the villain in my story instead of dealing with my own shit. And Mom, I need you to know, when I tell Henry about his grandmother, I tell him you're the strongest person I've ever known. I tell him how you built a business from nothing, how you took care of Dad when he was sick, how you loved our family even when we didn't deserve it. The words blur a little, and I realize I'm crying. Not the desperate, gasping sobs of grief I'm used to, but something gentler. Something that feels almost like relief. I don't know if you'll ever want to see us again. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. The things I said to you, the way I treated you, I was hurting, but that doesn't excuse any of it. You deserved better from me, especially after everything you sacrificed to raise me and take care of Dad. I see that now, even if it took me way too long to figure it out. I set the letter down for a moment, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. Through the window, I can see Mrs. Chen from next door working in her garden, her granddaughter helping plant what looks like tomato seedlings. The little girl can't be more than 6, but she's taking the job seriously, carefully patting soil around each tiny plant like she understands that something precious is depending on her. When I pick up the letter again, my hands are shaking just slightly. Vivian and I are doing better now. We both got our heads on straight, found jobs we actually like, bought a little house with a yard where Henry can play. He's incredible, Mom. He's got Dad's curiosity about everything and your stubbornness when he sets his mind to something. He asks about you sometimes, wants to know why Grandma Miriam lives so far away and when he can meet you. I never know what to say. What do you say to a 5-year-old about complicated grown-up mistakes? How do you explain that sometimes loving someone means protecting yourself from them, even when it breaks your heart? I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to let us back into your life or to pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. I just needed you to know that I'm working on becoming the kind of man Dad would have been proud of, the kind of son you deserved all along. I needed you to know that I think about you every day and that I'm sorry, so goddamn sorry for all the ways I failed you. The letter is signed simply Daniel, and there's a PS at the bottom that makes my breath catch. I'm enclosing a picture Henry drew of his family. He insisted on including you, even though he's never met you. Kids see things differently, I guess. I turn the page and find a child's drawing in crayon, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. There's a tall figure labeled Daddy, and a smaller one labeled Mommy, and a tiny one labeled Me right in the middle. And there, at the end of the chain of paper people, is another figure with long gray hair and a big smile, carefully labeled in a 5-year-old's uncertain handwriting, Grandma Miriam who lives by the lake. I stare at this drawing for a long time, at the way little Henry included me in his family portrait even though I'm nothing more than a story to him, a character in the complicated mythology of his father's past. There's something both heartbreaking and hopeful about being remembered by someone who's never known you, about taking up space in a child's imagination. I fold the letter carefully and place it on the windowsill next to my coffee cup. Outside, the Mallard family is still at their swimming lessons, the parents patient and encouraging as their babies learn to navigate the water that will carry them through their lives. I don't know if I'll write back. I don't know if forgiveness is something I'm ready for, or if trust can be rebuilt from the ashes of what we destroyed 5 years ago. I don't know if I want to be a grandmother to a child whose father spent years teaching me that my love wasn't worth respecting. But for the first time in 5 years, I know that the choice is mine to make. Not guilt, not obligation, not the weight of family expectations or social pressure, or the fear of being alone. Just me, deciding what feels right, what serves the person I fought so hard to become. I pick up the drawing again, studying little Henry's careful crayon work, the way he made sure everyone in his family was smiling, including the grandmother he's never met who lives by a lake he's never seen. Maybe that's enough for now. Maybe being remembered with love by a child who only knows my name is more than I thought I'd ever have again. Maybe the choice being mine is the only answer I need.